Hey, what's going on, guys? Recently, after the UFC 303 fight announcement, Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler, Michael Chandler said, "I'm sorry to hear about the passing of your beloved series, about the decision making I've made in my illustrious career." And I wish that was the case. But people kept telling me, Michael Chandler did an interview on the MMA Hour, which I saw bits and pieces of, but I hadn't had time to watch the thing in its entirety. And I figured it was him just saying, I'm excited for the fight. See you at the top. But people kept telling me, Joe, you got to do a video on this. You got to do a video on this. And I am so glad I finally took the time out of my night, my Saturday night, to watch Michael Chandler on the MMA Hour from a couple days ago after the fight was made official. Because not only was he completely delusional still, this is going to sound like an exaggeration. You will see what I mean in a second because we're going to look at a bunch of clips from this interview. I'll link the entire interview in the description if you want to go check it out. Michael Chandler, point by point, essentially confirms that I was right about every single thing that I was saying about him. The only thing that I got wrong is saying, and this still remains to be seen, but it appears it's going to happen now. The only thing that I got wrong was, this fight's never happening. He basically confirms everything that I've been saying about the decision to wait for this fight, and just you'll see it for yourself here in a second. We're going to jump right over to the interview here in a second. But also, Michael Chandler said single-handedly the most delusional thing I've ever heard him say in this interview when talking about another fighter. And luckily for, I guess, viewer retention reasons, he said it towards the end of this interview, so it'll be one of the last things that we look at. And then also on top of that, Ariel Helwani said something in this interview. I wanted to jump through the screen, throw him to the ground, and start stomping on him because of how stupid of a question it was. And essentially him and Chandler are pushing this way of thinking on other MMA fans. And it's so devoid of logic. It's so detached from reality. And I can't wait to look at that as well. We get to shit on Ariel Helwani. People think, oh, you just defend Ariel Helwani. That's not the case. I defend people when I think they deserve to be defended. I, go after people or, call people out when I think they deserve to be called out. But let's jump right into the interview. I don't want to waste any more time. We're going to start off with Chandler talking about, he's known for months. We're just gonna set up this interview in general. This isn't anything groundbreaking, but he's known for months, and basically talking about the announcement itself. Listen to this.
I've known for months, obviously, that we've been targeting June 29th. I haven't really talked much about it, and obviously we've had it inked for a little while, and just kept my little mouth shut. And
literally every time June 29th was mentioned, he literally went on a slew of interviews. So that's just a lot. He talked to Brett Okamoto in January about June 29th. He left his family in January to go train for a fight that wasn't even close to being signed, because in this interview, he says it was a couple weeks ago. But anyway, let's continue listening.
And kept training, kept my head down. And then, I knew they were going to announce it after. And the way that Dana White announced the biggest fight of the last decade, possibly, with Conor coming back and all that stuff, was on a piece of paper. So, yes. Man, it was pretty funny.
I thought for a second, just for a split second, I thought, is he taking a shot at Dana? And then I realized, he began sucking Dana off for the manner in which Dana White announced this fight. We're going to listen to that next, because this next clip, you're going to see him sucking off Dana a little bit, but you're also going to see the fact that he was so excited to see this fight finally announced, and he was still questioning in his mind if it was actually going to get announced. He was glued to the UFC 300 post-fight presser. He was glued to it because he was praying, once Dana finally announces it, there's no going back from there. Listen to this. This isn't, again, all that groundbreaking. We're going to get to the more delusional things that he said here in a second, but listen to this.
It's just... it's sweet. It was funny. It was cool. And I knew it was coming. I was watching the post-fight press conference. I was about to do an appearance, and all of a sudden, the piece of paper came in, and I'm like, this has got to be it. And I never once had the thought like, oh, man, I want a big promo, or I want flashing lights and stuff. Man, a fight's a fight, and obviously it's a huge fight. And I think the way that they did it is was kind of baller because it was the exact opposite of what you and everyone else expected.
So essentially sucking off Dana for announcing it off of a piece of paper. I think people get a little bit crazy about any UFC announcement. They're like, oh, they need to announce it at the presser. They need to announce it during the card. They need to announce this. They need to announce that. Now, at the end of the day, they just need to announce it. But the fact that he's going out of his way to say, oh, what a phenomenal announcement by Dana. I mean, talk about brown nosing to the ultimate level. Now, this next clip we're going to look at, this confirms something that I've been telling you guys time and time again over the past year and a half when this saga's been going on. And Ariel asked him, was 155 ever discussed? And, you know, you look at his face right here. He's trying to think. But you're going to hear him basically admit that he had no say in any of it. You know, basically he just sat around waiting for a phone call. He had no say in it, which is something I've been saying for a long time. He was basically on a need-to-know basis, and then basically they just sent the contract when they sent the contract. Listen to this.
Not really. I mean, once Conor has been talking about the bigger weight classes now for years, right? Obviously, I can make 155. I don't like to make 155. It's going to be tough for me to even make 155 unless I'm fighting for a belt, a BMF belt, or the lightweight title belt at this point. But, I think 170 is perfect. 170 is enough to keep us both disciplined enough through a training camp, and it's going to be a little bit of a cut.
170 is perfect. 170 is literally the worst thing about this fight. But again, Michael Chandler had no say in it. He wasn't asked. He wasn't consulted. Nobody got his opinion on it. They knew Michael Chandler would fight him at 205 if offered. You know, he would have fought him. He would have tried to make 145 if it was offered. So he had no bearing on what actually was going on. To quote Conor McGregor, you'll do what you're told. And that's what Michael Chandler's doing. So it's always awkward when I hear these questions. Oh, was there any talks of this, talks of that? Because Michael Chandler had no idea what was actually going on. And he essentially confirms it there. He just starts talking about what Conor was saying publicly. Because Chandler, in my opinion, was getting all his information from Googling his name or looking at updates from post-fight press conference. That's essentially what he was doing. Now, this next clip literally confirms what I've been saying for basically a year now and what I just alluded to about Chandler was lying awake at night, okay? And I left a question in here. Ariel basically asked him point blank, were you lying awake at night thinking that this fight may never happen? And I told you guys that the situation was so up in the air with Conor McGregor's contract situation, with the USADA situation, with the potential drug abuse situation with Conor. I told you guys that the situation was so up in the air that Michael Chandler wasn't even sure the fight was happening. And essentially he was trying to manifest it with a positive attitude. And the more interviews he did with TMZ, telling them that the fight was going to happen and telling the fans and the media that the fight was going to happen, he was hoping in a way to back the UFC and Conor into a corner that the fight had to happen no matter what, because he was doubting it so much that it would actually happen, which basically admits here, he was having nightmares at night. I actually feel bad for Chandler, but at the same time, I think he kind of did it to himself. And something he says at the end of this interview was just crazy. I can't wait. I almost want to skip ahead to get to that. But he confirms it here. He was lying awake at night. I'm glad that he can finally rest his head and, know that the fight is official. Listen to this.
Lying down and you have a moment of peace with your wife. Did you ever have a moment in all of this where you're lying down, you're just reflecting, and you look to her and say, I don't know if this is ever going to happen? Did you ever doubt for a moment that all of this would be for naught?
I literally think Chandler was scouring the internet, scouring YouTube, whether it be Chael Sonnen's videos, my videos. I would love to have Chandler on, by the way, and talk about all this. But I think he was scouring it for information because he had no idea what was going on, and he admits that here.
Absolutely. There was times. I think overall the general sentiment, because there's so much more reassurances behind the scenes than are front facing to the media, to the fans, insiders, inside information, all that kind of stuff. And it was chaotic. There was a lot of chaos going on, man. I mean,
there was a lot of chaos going on, and which is why I did not believe the fight would happen last summer, which is why I believe the fight wouldn't happen last fall, which is why I believe the fight wouldn't happen last December, which is why I believe the fight wouldn't happen at UFC 300, which is why I didn't believe the fight would ever materialize. Because there were so many different, just points of contention to make this fight happen. And if you followed all the breadcrumbs, it seemed like the fight was never going to happen.
Take you back to Conor calling out basically every single person on every single card for a couple months straight there.
Again, I pointed that out. I said, look, Conor's definitely coming back, and Conor's definitely going to fight Chandler. No, Dana White wasn't even sure it was Chandler, and Conor's calling out everyone under the sun. Perfectly reasonable to surmise that Chandler may not get the fight that he's waiting out for.
Justin winning the BMF belt, and calling out all these different guys, and Diaz was kind of throwing his name in the mix, and then UFC 300 and the time, or the whole USADA thing up and down, and then the fight date getting pushed back, and obviously, yeah, man, I'm a human being. You can have unwavering faith. You can have great confident expectancy. You can expect great things to happen. You can build yourself up and do the right things for the right thing, the good things.
Again, I mean, if you guys have been following my coverage of this from the beginning, this is Michael Chandler. I feel so vindicated with this particular interview. Literally, what he is saying is almost what he's saying is fact from his point of view. Is almost my exact analysis. And I know some people are like, oh, you were hating on Chandler and you said this or you said that. Look, I'm unfiltered. I just say what I think. And I thought he was groveling for a fight that may never happen, and it was quite frankly embarrassing. But again, what he's using here is, I'm gonna, what does Bisbing always say? Conceive, believe, achieve. Literally, Chandler was probably listening to motivational speakers, and he was like, yeah, I'm gonna manifest this. I'm gonna make it happen through, goodwill and faith. And I honestly believe he was probably hitting church and really, really begging for this Conor fight. To be quite honest, I think that's how bad his headspace was, thinking that this may never happen, which if one participant is questioning whether or not it may happen, how am I crazy for telling you guys, look, I don't think it's going to happen, when they're selling you wolf tickets for summer 2023, when they're selling you wolf tickets for fall of 2023, when they're selling you, I'm not even going to go through all the dates. You get the point. Sorry, I was right, 5 out of the 6 times, but let's continue listening.
And blessings to be bestowed upon you, but it doesn't mean that you can't be so naive or so uneducated throughout life to know that bad things are going to happen. Like doors might get closed, right? So I have my moments, of course. But overall, I stayed in the gym. All I did was try to focus on what I can control, man. When everything is taken away from you from a control standpoint, even though you're doing what you need to be doing, even though you're making the right decision, even though everyone is criticizing you and pointing the finger at you.
Again, he had no control. He had no say. He just showed up to the gym and he prayed on Sunday. That's essentially Chandler's involvement in making this fight happen. He did the Ultimate Fighter. He went to the gym and he prayed for the last year and a half that Conor would finally return and give him the time of day. That's literally what happened. And in this next clip, again, I mean, spot on analysis from me. I don't want to keep patting myself on the back, but I told you guys, I said Chandler is getting desperate. Chandler was so terrified that after all this waiting, he was going to come out looking like an idiot. And I know some people may not believe this when I say this. I am genuinely happy that Michael Chandler finally got the fight. I am happy to be wrong when I said that it would never happen. I am happy to be wrong. I'm never rooting against somebody. There has to be a very particular set of circumstances for me to be actively rooting against somebody. I was just giving my honest thoughts. But in this next clip, Chandler says basically he was terrified of looking like an idiot in this whole situation.
In business. So it's there was a lot of blessings in there, and I could count those blessings, even though my flesh, my human, every now and then was like, dang, dude, you're gonna look like a big idiot if this thing doesn't happen. And that's the ego talking, and ego is the enemy. And
so there you go. He was terrified of looking like an idiot if it didn't happen. Now this next clip, we have so many clips to go through. I'm trying to go through them rapid fire. This again, I mean, it literally just confirms exactly what I've been saying. I said that Michael Chandler sitting out was bad business for Michael Chandler. It's also bad business for the UFC because Chandler is exciting. Chandler kind of admits it here. He kind of admits that, oh, well, it's bad business for the UFC. So if it's bad business for the UFC for Chandler to be sitting on the shelf, that means it's bad business for Chandler, because if the UFC is making money, Chandler's making money. And he points that out right here. And this is the drum that I've been beating for a year and a half as a fan who likes to see Michael Chandler fight rather than seeing him grovel on TMZ for a year and a half. As a fan, I wanted to see him fight. And I said, look, he can make money. And meanwhile, the Conor McGregor fight is always there. And he admits it right here. It was bad for business sitting out.
Decline.
Never, man. And it's bad business. It's bad business for me to be sitting on the shelf. If you look at the UFC from a business standpoint, it's bad business for one of the most exciting guys on the roster, if not the most exciting guy on the roster, to be sitting on the sidelines this long. Really bad business. And these are smart businessmen.
Really bad business. I mean, how long have I been saying that? Genuinely, how long have I been saying this is bad business? It's bad business for Chandler in particular because he passed up on bare minimum 2 to 3 paydays. He was pretty active. He probably could have fought 4 times at least. I would say he could have fought 4 times since he was pretty active. But instead of those paychecks, which would have been good paychecks, he waited for a Conor McGregor fight where he believes deeply in the red panty night fallacy, which people have been tricked into believing over the last 10 years. Maybe the last time Conor McGregor got a good win was 10 years ago, which, we're going to get into actually in a second. But again, it's bad for business. Next bullet point here, where I'm confirmed again to be right. Chandler talks about beating Conor and what that means here, okay? Or losing to Conor and what that means here. I think he talked about both, but I'm just going to show you the clip where he talks about what losing to Conor would mean, essentially. Listen to this. And again, another thing that I've been saying forever that Chandler confirms I was right on.
He's putting the work in. Man, I truly believe, man. I mean, there's some pressure on me, right? I can't lose to the guy who's been out for 3 years, right? I can't lose to the guy who's been written off. I can't lose to the guy who gave up and he's sleeping on silk sheets and on his Lamborghini. Yeah, I can't lose to that guy, right?
He can't lose to a washed up, inactive, catastrophically injured, returning Conor McGregor who looks like he's been doing drugs and been getting drunk every night of his life for the last 2 to 3 years. So if he can't lose to that guy because it would be so humiliating and hurtful for his career, what does that mean if he wins? What is everyone going to say justifiably if he wins? They're going to say, oh, you beat up a washed up Conor McGregor who seems to be an alcoholic, potentially on coke, who's been out for 3 years, who's coming back from a leg break. What does that win mean? I mean, Conor is coming back at 170. He does not have a meaningful win at 170. But then again, he doesn't have a meaningful win at 155 since 2016. Some fans were literally swimming around in their dad's nutsack the last time Conor had a quality win. And Chandler is acting as if, and Ariel does too, and we're going to get to that in a second, like beating Conor McGregor is something magical. When here he's saying, I can't lose to him. Well, what does a win mean? What does a win mean? A win against Conor McGregor in 2024 is essentially the same level of win as that guy who fought BJ Penn outside a bar like 10 years ago and knocked him out outside a bar. That's essentially what a Michael Chandler win against Conor McGregor is. But let's listen to a little bit more of this.
So there's a lot of pressure going on. And I do know and think training to fight the most motivated Conor that we have ever had. It's going to be hard to top Conor, the motivated Conor from 2016 and 2018 and all the fights that we all loved and all watched his meteoric rise and how he captured the hearts and minds of not just the mixed martial arts community, but the entire world.
First off, Conor did not capture the hearts and minds of everyone in the entire world. Geez, can you rim him any harder? Like, I know people think I'm being harsh, but seriously, he's about to talk about selling the fight. Yeah, rimming him that hard is really going to get the pay-per-views flowing in, Chandler. But again, talking about this isn't the same Conor. This isn't the Conor, the magical Conor of 2014 to 2016. That isn't him anymore. That Conor doesn't exist anymore. So therefore, a loss to him is catastrophic for your career. A win means absolutely nothing. It means absolutely nothing. It's not even going to build the star power that you think it is, at least in my opinion. Could be proven wrong. Could be completely proven wrong on that one. But that remains to be seen. We'll see that in the future. Now, nextly, is that even a word? Next? We're going to say next instead. He talks about selling the fight. And this is where I'm like, is there any brains up there? Like, I know he has supposedly multiple successful businesses. I know he proved me wrong when I said it was never going to happen, and he messaged me to gloat about it, and he really owned me and really got to me, which honestly, it made me kind of want to, I'm kind of rooting for him now, honestly. I know that sounds crazy. Maybe you guys don't believe me. I'm rooting for him to beat Conor now because I do feel bad for him. I think at the end of the day, I just think he's a way too nice of a guy who is living in his own fantasy world of positivity and, whatever else it may be. He literally talks here about selling the pay-per-view. And I just think, again, this is just delusion. I mean, I don't know what world Chandler is living in.
I've said, and I've gone on record now saying everybody has to buy this pay-per-view because one of two things is going to happen. Conor either succeeds in coming back and it being the greatest comeback in combat sports history, and he gets a win, and he's back on the horse, he's back in the win column, and he's probably fighting a huge fight, whether it's the BMF belt, whether it's the lightweight title, whether it's the welterweight title, whether it's something, right?
I mean, at this point, if Chandler's right there, the UFC's ruined. The UFC has lost all credibility. McGregor's going to return after a 3-year layoff and beat up an inactive Michael Chandler coming off a loss at a weight class that they don't particularly participate in to get a title shot in that weight class when there's plenty of contenders, or to get a title shot in a weight class below that, or, okay, I guess the BMF title kind of can make sense because it's a gimmick belt, but he's literally saying if Conor beats me up, he's going to be fighting for a title at welterweight. What? If that happens, the UFC has lost all credibility. I don't know if I want to watch this sport anymore if that genuinely happens, because that would be ridiculous, completely ridiculous. Let's listen to more.
That's scenario one, but the most likely scenario is I go out there and absolutely dismantle him, and it might be the last time we ever see Conor fight, right?
So, again, when I beat him, he's so washed up, he's so old, he's so, unmotivated that if I beat him, he's automatically retired. Okay, so what does that win mean for you? And he gets into selling the fights here in a second. I thought it was right there, but it's actually 2 clips from now where he talks about it a little bit more. But yeah, that's really going to sell it. Oh, I'm going to retire this guy. Okay, the return of Conor is a big selling point, but that really has nothing to do with Chandler. All right, next up. And this one honestly made me think, is Chandler, like, tell me if I'm crazy, guys. If you respond to anything in this video, I want you to respond to this. Am I crazy for feeling like Chandler's going to go out there and intentionally lose this fight just so McGregor can have a resurgence and help the UFC? That's what it seems like, man, because he's asked specifically, will you leg kick Conor McGregor? Which is a stupid question by Ariel to begin with. But Chandler's answer was even more shocking.
Man, I'm not a big leg kicker. Yeah. Honestly, throwing leg kicks hurts me most of the time more than it hurts my opponent. Now, I do have a feather in my cap that I put Justin Gaethje in an ambulance via leg kicks, the biggest leg kicker, which it's tough to talk about him right now because of what just happened. And God, I love freaking Justin Gaethje, one of the best to ever do it. But that was obviously an orthodox versus an orthodox matchup. This is going to be orthodox versus southpaw. His hurt leg, if you would, going after it, it's his back leg. So me focusing on anything other than just being me and focusing on my strengths, which is always punches in bunches, big punches to the head, punches to the body, pick him up, put him down.
Basically, I'm going to go out there and brawl and probably get chinned with a straight left hand. That's what I'm hearing right there. That's what I mean. And I know Michael Chandler isn't known for his fight IQ, and at this point, he's not really known for his IQ in general. But to say, yeah, I'm probably not going to leg kick him, I usually get hurt, and blah, 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 when he literally was out leg kicking Justin Gaethje is crazy. And he goes on a little bit more.
Type of in-your-face, foot on the gas type of Michael Chandler style. It would be silly for me to think about anything more than that. Obviously, it was Weidman's back leg, and Tavares was beating up the front leg, which then, anytime you can mess up a guy's foundation, it's good for you. It changes their movement, messes up the power in their punches. But I don't see myself throwing a lot of leg kicks in this fight.
I swear, Michael Chandler gives me vibes as he's taking a dive. He needs to be investigated. If anything suspicious happens at 303, we need a full-blown investigation. Next up is when he really starts talking about delusional stuff with selling the fight, okay? He makes a statement that I literally couldn't even believe that I heard come out of his mouth. Listen to this.
And this is no disrespect to, we want to break that Khabib number, right? The 2.4. And that was huge because of the animosity and the biggest Muslim athlete on the planet. I mean, it had all the makings of it doing that kind of number. But this one, Conor's comeback, one of the most violent guys in the sport. I mean, it's we got 73 days to build this thing. I know the UFC wants to build it. Man, I'm ready to go anywhere. I'm ready to go anywhere in this country. I'll fly to Ireland tomorrow. I will hop on a plane.
Okay, we get it. You'll fly to Ireland, blah, 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 so on and so forth. He'll do anything. The return of Conor McGregor sells itself. It doesn't matter if he's fighting Chandler. It doesn't matter if he's fighting Tony Ferguson. It doesn't matter if he's fighting the dead body of Diego Sanchez. Name any dead body. It doesn't matter, okay? Sub him in instead of Michael Chandler. The pay-per-view is going to sell a decent amount. But to take it to that next level, he specifically singles out he wants to beat McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov pay-per-view sales, which did over 2 million pay-per-view buys, which I believe is the only UFC pay-per-view that ever did over 2 million pay-per-view buys. Chandler thinks a good strategy is let me deep throat this guy day in and day out. Let me suck him off in every interview ever. Who would even want to see a Conor McGregor-Michael Chandler press conference? I certainly don't. It's going to be embarrassing. Chandler's going to be like, yeah, I really respect what Conor's done in his career, which isn't nothing in the last 10 years. And, and then Conor's going to be like, oh, you'll do what you're told, and probably call him a nerd. And, Conor will be slightly entertaining, but I just don't think, I think the base pay-per-view sales for this Conor McGregor fight, whether it's Michael Chandler or somebody else, is going to be the same. Chandler adds nothing to it other than true excitement and craziness, which only resonates with casuals when you have something else drawing them in. Like, there's not casuals buying Michael Chandler fights in general. If Michael Chandler headlines against some Joe Schmo, Chandler's not drawing in a lot of pay-per-view buys, okay? That's my point. And you can kind of catch lightning in a bottle with a Conor McGregor fight. Nate Diaz kind of did it. Nate Diaz already had a little bit of a following as well. But just rim jobbing him at every turn is not what's going to get you to 2 million pay-per-view buys. So please, Chandler, talk about him cheating on his wife. Talk about him in the NBA Finals restroom. I understand maybe that's not your personality, and that's fine. Well, then at least go the route of, I respect him, and that's it. I'm going to whoop his ass. That's it. Rather than just rim jobbing every accomplishment he's ever had, naming every accolade he's ever achieved, and pretending like he's in his prime, because he's not. Because you're never, ever, 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 ever getting past 2 million pay-per-view buys, regardless, let alone if all you do is suck him off the entire time. Now, this next clip, and this is second to last clip. I know this video is a bit long. Do me a favor, guys. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications. Like this video. Share this video. I would greatly appreciate it. But this next clip is where Ariel really, I don't even know what the word for it is. I don't really get angry, but I listening to this, I felt a visceral reaction. I wanted to jump through the screen and grab Ariel by his ankles and just throw him right into the TV screen. Listen to this question and tell me you don't want to sucker punch Ariel like he's your brother at Thanksgiving dinner. Listen to this question, and then Michael Chandler's answer actually pissed me off too, because it was just as bad. Listen to this exchange.
So here we are, and I think that you can make a case. Tell me if you feel otherwise. A win over Conor McGregor at any point is just as big as becoming a champion. Do you feel like if it never happens for whatever reason, you becoming UFC champion, will this suffice? Will this scratch that itch? You be the guy that beat Conor McGregor in the comeback fight, all that stuff. Will this be the thing that you could tell your kids and grandkids about, or are they two separate things in your opinion?
Where's Vince McMahon when you need him? He literally just said, hey, Chandler is beating up a washed up superstar from 10 years ago who's been out for 3 years with a catastrophic injury but was washed up before the injury, hasn't won a decent fight in 8 years, is beating him more of a career accomplishment than winning a title and proving that you're the best in your weight class. How? I don't understand that. You know, I understand these guys are prize fighters. Okay, I understand they're out there to make money. Okay, fair enough. But to act like a win over a washed up Conor McGregor who spends the majority of his time getting drunk and sniffing coke and looking at gay porn on Twitter, to pretend like that's something to tell your children and grandchildren about. Where's Vince McMahon? Where's Chris Weidman? Because somebody needs to poke him in the eyes multiple times for saying that. That is one of the worst things I've ever heard Ariel Helwani utter from his lips. And he needs to be slapped for that, to be quite honest. You know, he's only safe because I allow him to be safe. You know, to quote Jamal Hill. And I thought Chandler was going to say, oh no, this is going to be a great accomplishment, but nothing will ever compare to the title. No, that's not what he says. Listen to what Chandler has to say.
Man, the competitor in me says, you know, you want to be the champion. I always said, even back when I got into the sport, when I was in Bellator, all those years, nobody watching, nobody covering my stuff, even the big pay-per-views, Ariel Helwani.
By the way, for everyone who thinks I'm a Michael Chandler hater, I was watching all the Chandler Bellator fights.
Doesn't go to, they send the second stringer, the third stringer, you know, and I remember all that stuff, dude. I got receipts, and I always wanted to become the number one guy in the world. So the competitor in me says I want that. But yeah, when it comes to making people feel something, when it comes to doing something that the whole world is going to be watching, you get into the sport for a couple of different reasons. You want the biggest fights, to fight the biggest guys under the brightest lights. It doesn't get any bigger than this. So yes, from the standpoint of, I mean, after this, where do you go up from this, right? You know, you got this huge fight coming up.
Imagine how low you have to be. Is he poor? I know he's saying, you know, he's got all these successful businesses and he's doing just fine. He's made a lot in his MMA career. Imagine saying, yeah, I can't wait to beat up that washed up drug addict, alcoholic. And that's going to be the biggest accomplishment of my entire career. That is crazy. Imagine if Brad Tavares tells his grandchildren, yeah, I beat Chris Weidman, former champion. You know, hadn't won a fight and God knows how long. He was coming back from a catastrophic injury, completely washed up, almost 40 years old. Imagine Brad Tavares bragging about a Chris Weidman win. That is a similar situation to Chandler bragging about a Conor McGregor win. Except, yeah, this guy was popular. At this point, I mean, who's the most popular person? Who's the most popular celebrity? At this point, Chandler, you might as well find one of these, you know, celebrities to box you in some influencer boxing. And then you could be like, yeah, this was the greatest achievement of my entire life. And I thought this was the low point of the interview. And it was hard for me to stomach this entire interview, honestly. It was 40 minutes long. By the way, I'll link the full interview down in the description if you want to go check it out. But the last clip, and I'm going in chronological order too, was truly the most delusional, tone-deaf statement I have ever heard Michael Chandler say. And I've been listening to a lot of Michael Chandler interviews over the last 6 months to a year. This was clearly the most delusional thing I've ever heard him say. And he's judging another man's career, which he's the one that's saying, oh, all these people living in their grandma's basement and these losers on their keyboards. By the way, Chandler, okay, I own a home that's probably nicer than the majority of the UFC roster because of what Dana's paying them, okay? And I bought this home in my early 20s. So if that was directed at me, you're completely wrong. But he goes further to criticize Arman Tsarukyan. Listen to... I'm actually getting annoyed even thinking about it. Listen to what he has to say about Arman Tsarukyan. Completely ridiculous. Some people say, oh, you say completely wrong, because it doesn't matter. Listen to what he had to say about Arman. I wanted to jump through the screen and give him the old Chris Weidman. Listen to this.
I will not be there, but I'll be watching.
Can
And
Armin?
I would love to fight the winner. Armin just went out there, beat Oliveira. Obviously, he sounds like he's going to be #1 contender next. I also don't understand why he didn't take that fight. I would have taken it.
Even though it's a
but
short
obviously,
turnaround.
Man, you don't get crazy. This
Yeah.
sport moves fast.
Yeah.
Am I hearing things? Did this motherfucker really just say, yeah, I would have taken that opportunity on short notice because the sport moves fast? You've been sitting on the sidelines for damn near 2 years. You're in your late 30s. Armin's 27 years old, has earned his shot. Why should he be a dumbass like you and waste potentially a title shot that he's earned through actually fighting contenders and winning? Why should he waste that shot while not being 100%? Oh, because you like to deep throat Daddy Dana White. That's why. I could not believe that he said this. I could not believe it. And he goes on a little bit more.
The sport moves very fast. And June 1st, you're going to see the lightweight title happen. And then a couple of weeks later, you're going to see the biggest fight, a fight that's way bigger than that, happen. And both of those guys can make lightweight. So the sport moves fast. So you got to take your opportunities. You got to pounce on them.
You got to take your opportunities. You got to pounce on them. You sat out for almost 2 years waiting for Conor to show you attention. And you're criticizing a 27-year-old who's earned his title shot for not turning around on, what, 6 weeks notice? Yeah, less than 6 weeks notice. What a complete dumbass. And I'm trying not to be too harsh. I'm rooting for Chandler now. I like Chandler more now than I liked him before. But to say those types of things, if he was my best friend and I saw this interview, I'd be like, what the hell? I don't want to get this video demonetized. What the hell? This doesn't even make any sense. This is devoid of all logic. To say, yeah, the sport moves fast. The 27-year-old should potentially waste his title shot that he's earned through hard work while you're sitting on the sidelines with one dude on your mind. I guess two, because you have me on your mind too. To do that and to criticize Armin and then to say, yeah, because the winner of me and Conor might get a title shot in a weight class that we're not even fighting in. I mean, there's a chance of that. But if it is, the UFC has lost all credibility. I can't believe he had the audacity. I can't believe he had the nerve to say that. Yeah, you know what Armin should have done? He should have turned down every fight for the last 2 years and say, I'm only fighting for the title, and then just prayed that it happened. And, went on TMZ and say, oh, yeah, it's definitely happening, and sell wolf tickets to the fans who were getting excited for a fight, that you're selling wolf tickets to a certain date. Maybe that's what Armin should have done. I could not believe that he said that about Armin Tsarukyan. But overall, I love this interview. Confirmed literally bullet point by bullet point by bullet point everything that I've been espousing for the last year and a half to be true, to be accurate. The only thing that I truly got wrong was this fight's never going to happen. That's the only thing I truly got wrong. No shame in that. No shame in that. I was wrong. I can admit that I was wrong. But he confirms everything that I've already been saying without his confirmation. Well, he's basically been subliminally confirming these things when I analyze the different things he's saying, the different things Dana White is saying. But that last line about Armin Tsarukyan, the fact that he's talking about selling a pay-per-view more than Khabib versus Conor while he's brown-nosing Conor, he could literally tell you what Conor had for dinner last night because he's been sniffing his ass so hard. I had to cover this interview. I'm glad I did. Shout out to everyone who told me I needed to cover this interview. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next video.